Welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast, where we explore the spirituality of the Christian child through the method of the catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I am your host, Carrie Mecki Lozano. Today, Pilar Bewley joins us once again to discuss positive discipline, and she shares some really practical tools that can help us uphold both freedom and limits, whether it's in the atrium or in our homes. Pilar is an AMI certified guide for both primary and elementary. She's also a positive discipline facilitator. And after she spent over a decade teaching in Montessori classrooms, Pilar began homeschooling her own children in 2019. Her passion for making Montessori education accessible inspired her to create Mainly Montessori, where she mentors parents who choose to homeschool using Montessori principles. So if you check out our show notes, you can find Pilar's Instagram account and her website, mainlymontessori.com. I hope you enjoy. Pilar, welcome back to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
It is a pleasure to pick your brain and to learn from you and all your experience. I really appreciate you joining us back.
Thanks. So happy to be here.
So, Pilar, you have extensive experience in positive discipline. I would love to learn more about positive discipline especially over this year, since we've really been diving into this concept of freedom and responsibility, and positive discipline is such a beautiful tool for that. I have learned a lot, and I'm just hungry to learn more. So I'm so excited to sit at your feet and learn. So tell me, what is this idea of positive discipline? What does it have to teach us?
Positive discipline is overall, it's the idea that children do better when they feel better. It's called positive because we are focusing on the children's positive intentions in their behavior. We are being adults that have a positive desire to help the children, not to punish the children. So that's the positive part of it. And discipline is the understanding that pro-social behavior comes from inside the child, from within the child. It comes from a desire to want to collaborate, to want to be respectful, but that can only happen when the conditions are right. And so what positive discipline does is it helps parents understand where their children are coming from and how to create the conditions so that we can parent and be in a relationship that's a lot more collaborative, cooperative, respectful, and just more joyous overall. Mm-hmm. And what's fascinating about positive discipline is that we usually look at it from the perspective of parent and child, but it applies to any relationship, adult relationships, marriage relationships, work relationships. So it is just a different understanding of what motivates human beings and how to go about it in a respectful way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as I was reading the book Positive Discipline in the Montessori Classroom, there was a lot of things that they were lifting up that I was thinking, well, I desire that too. Like the whole idea of significance and belonging. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's a core need across all humanity. Like we, even as adults, that is not limited to children to feel that way. That is humanity. And everything I hear you saying, there's so much Montessori. Like I hear so much dignity in what you're saying. Like it's really treating the other person with all the human dignity that they deserve.
Absolutely.
And observing them so that you can respond meeting their needs rather than a place of pride and anger that does not give them the dignity that they deserve.
Absolutely. And the thing is, in a Montessori classroom or atrium, if we want to give children freedom, we have to give them the skills so that they can function in that freedom. And that's what positive discipline does, is it allows the children to learn how to navigate problems, disagreements, how to set limits and boundaries with their peers and even with adults, how to communicate clearly what they need so that they can benefit from that freedom, so that they can be free to learn, to develop, to socialize, all of that. And that's why, in my opinion, every Montessori practitioner should be made aware that positive discipline exists and should really take some time to understand how the two can go hand in hand. And also, while we're, again, looking at positive discipline as a way of, supporting children, it's also supporting us in our work so that we don't get frustrated, so that we don't try to control the children, right? And so that we can actually model healthy emotional maturity, so we can co-regulate with the children and then eventually give them that freedom so that they can independently regulate themselves.
Right. Because it's creating an environment that will also be respectful to you as the adult.
Yes.
So that helps you not have those so strong emotions that make you want to respond with, anger or pride or whatever it is. It helps both parties or all parties be able to live in an environment together that is full of dignity for all parties, that those healthy boundaries and such. Yeah,
absolutely. Because, most of us were not raised with these principles and these practices. And so when we're under moments of stress, we revert back to what we know, what we learned in childhood. And what positive discipline does is it helps us shift our conditioning. First, it helps us identify our conditioning. And positive discipline is very gentle. It doesn't shame the learner, the adult or the child. There is no shame. It's acknowledgement, and then it's taking steps in the right direction. And so the more tools that you have in your tool belt, and the more your attitude shifts towards one of understanding where the child is coming from and understanding where you are coming from, the more that you can create a positive environment and the more that these tools are going to be effective. Because the thing is, if you apply or try to apply the positive discipline tools simply as strategies to manipulate or control your environment, right? And you say, okay, well, I'm not doing rewards, I'm not doing punishments, but now I'm going to go in with these strategies and I'm going to make the children do what I want them to do with these very flowery strategies. It's not going to work. Just like people that say, well, I tried Montessori and it didn't work, but it's because the principles weren't in place. Positive discipline is the same. And the inverse is also true, that if you approach it with the right attitude, with the right understanding of what is driving the child and what is driving the adult, then even if you do it imperfectly, and we will make mistakes, so many mistakes, especially when we're starting out, but even if you do it imperfectly, it will work because the children will feel your energy, they'll feel your intention, and they will be receptive.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it takes that rewiring deep of our intentions, of our the way that we look at the children, the way that we look at quote unquote bad behavior. So it takes a lot of digging and growth for us as the adults, and maybe becoming aware of when we're putting the blame on the child rather than maybe us or the environment. Yeah, it just takes a lot of growth. So what would you say then would be some of those principles or that underlying philosophy that we need to grow in our awareness of, so that it's not us using this as a way to control or a tool, but actually changing us from the inside out?
Well, I think one of the places to start, there is no one starting place, but one of the places to start is to understand what actually motivates humans, not just children, but humans in general. And our society has told us, well, rewards, medals, trophies, grades, stars, things like that, or punishments, right? Having things taken away. I'll take your iPad away if you don't do X, Y, Z. But the reality is that children are motivated by the same things that we are, which are things like validation, like saying, like, I see that you were trying really hard to do this, by acknowledging when things don't go the right way. Like, you were trying really hard and it didn't work out for you the way that you wanted to. By helping each other walk through disappointment, by giving opportunities to contribute meaningfully, like in a Montessori classroom, by listening and by giving agency and choice. All of those aspects come together to help children and adults feel seen and heard. And so this leads to the positive discipline perspective that humans really need two things. They need significance and they need belonging. So significance means that you matter, that you have a purpose. And all humans ask themselves at one point or another, why am I here? What is my purpose? And belonging means that you're accepted the way you are. So it's not fitting in, it's not changing who you are or getting rid of certain qualities or masking certain qualities to fit in, but it's being seen and accepted for who you are. And then positive discipline goes into exploring different types of parenting approaches or, teaching approaches if it's a teacher working with children. And it also dives into a lot of practical aspects, like focusing on solutions, like understanding the belief that the child has that leads to their challenging or quote unquote negative behavior. So it is all this combination of perspectives and tools that come together to make positive discipline effective, but it all starts with significance and belonging.
I love this significance and belonging. This has been huge for me as I've read through this book, The Positive Discipline in the Montessori Classroom. Mm-hmm. He says that a sense of belonging, or they do, both Chip and Jane, a sense of belonging refers to whether we feel we fit in to our social group, family, or community. Like, again, I totally understand as a human, me as an adult, I also want to feel that, right?
Of
course, the child wants to feel that they fit in this family. They fit in this atrium. They fit in this community. And significance refers to whether or not we feel like we are important and can make a difference within our social group. This, I think about this one a whole lot. I think this is why children in the atrium, or in a Montessori classroom, whenever they have that quote unquote misbehavior happening and you're like, hey, you know what? This table is really dirty. You want me to show you how you can clean our tables? Because it is significant real work that they are drawn to, even from a very youngest age. Like my 18-month-old, she is constantly wanting to do significant work with me. Like, I'm moving the clothes from the washer to the dryer, and she wants me to hand her the clothes to put into the dryer. Like, it is a human need to feel that significance from a very young age. And I think, again, out of all the love in our hearts as adults, we're like, no, I got it. Or we're moving too fast, whatever it is. Like, I will cut your pizza. I will do all of this for you. I'll put on your clothes. All of the significance out of all the love in our hearts, we take away from them. But this pointed out to me in a very strong way how vital that need to feel significant, that need to feel important, and that they can make a difference within their community is for them. I loved that. I so appreciated them pointing this out.
Oh, it's huge. And the beautiful thing about Montessori and why positive discipline works so well is that positive discipline tells us the child has these needs, and Montessori creates the conditions that allows the child to express those needs. And so they go so well together when they are both approached from a perspective of wanting the child to be free, wanting the child to express those characteristics.
Yeah, it's like Montessori was already saying these things without deliberately saying them. a long decades ago. She was way before her time.
Oh, way before her time. So what happened to me was I had taken the Montessori training first. I took the primary training. I did 2 years as a primary guide, and then I took the elementary training, and I started my first elementary classroom. And I realized that I didn't have the tools that I needed in order to guide the children, not through the materials, but socially and emotionally. And so that's why I turned to positive discipline. And this was like 13 years ago. And I turned to positive discipline, and it was like the missing piece that we had not received in our Montessori training, because obviously there's only so much you can fit in 10 months of training. And so they focused on materials.
I'm laughing because our formation is like, for about 14 days ish for the level 1, so primary. Yeah. And that's so hard for people totally understandably. And we obviously cannot fit this into 14 days of formation. And you're saying 10 months. 10 months. I can't.
Imagine, yes, if they couldn't fit it in 10 months, they obviously can't fit it in 14 days. And so,
yes.
It really becomes the practitioner's responsibility to identify what are these tools that I'm missing, and how can I prepare myself, and how can I bring them into the classroom. And what's really great about positive discipline is that it's experiential. If you go to a workshop, you're not going to be lectured at for hours and hours. You are going to right away start having experiences that will illustrate to you how the child will feel when you bring those tools into the classroom or the atrium. And so then you'll be able to reflect on what the child's experience would be, how it would be different, and how your experience would be different, how you would be able to handle things in a different, more respectful way. And then you can right away start applying it in your classroom, in your atrium, and start noticing the results. Although sometimes things get harder before they get easier, because children, if they're used to the adult behaving in a certain way and the adult starts behaving differently, children might start pushing limits to try to understand what in the world is going on, and why is this adult no longer yelling or no longer punishing me, right? And so there is a process of unlearning and recalibrating the relationship. But once it clicks, it is such a beautiful thing, not just because it heals the relationship between the child and the adult, empowers the child in relationship, but then the children take their skills to others, to other children, and even to other adults. And so these are children who know how to set limits. These are children who know how to focus on solutions. Can I share a really quick story?
Please.
Okay, so my classroom was ages 6 through 12. It was a mixed ages classroom, and I had about 30 children. And I had a new student who had just come in. He had been homeschooled, and he was kind of very sheltered, only child. So he came in, and we had classroom meetings almost every day to resolve problems, because that's one of the aspects of positive discipline is the classroom meetings. So the first day that he participated in a classroom meeting, we brought up a problem, and he immediately came up with punishments. He said, we should take that child's recess away, or, we should make him sit by himself at lunchtime. I don't remember what the punishment was, right? And so I just looked over at him and I said, in this classroom, we focus on solutions, not on punishments. That was the phrase. And it's a positive discipline phrase. We focus on solutions, not on punishments. And so he just kind of sat there and thought about it. And the other children were offering solutions as part of the brainstorming process. And there's a very clear brainstorming process, by the way. So anyways, fast forward about 3 months of this child participating in classroom meetings and observing and starting to get involved in these discussions. And we have a new child coming into the classroom from a public school setting. And so we're having another meeting, and a situation comes up where a child had broken a rule, and the new child from the public school immediately said, we should take their recess away. And this child that had been in the classroom for about 3 months, the formerly homeschooled child, turned to the new child and said, in this classroom, we focus on solutions, not on punishments. And that was just such a win that he had understood that. And so that's how it trickles from one child to another. And that's how we change the world.
Yeah.
That is education for peace.
Yes, it totally, and which is what Montessori talked about, right?
Exactly.
And I love that you're emphasizing that it is not a switch, both for us as the parent or the adult, as well as the child. So if we fail a few times or 3 months or however, we have to let ourselves have that growth time, that shifting time, that adjusting time. And there's going to be mess along the way as we're growing in this new way of looking at each other respectfully and problems and et cetera, right? So I love that you're really emphasizing that this is not a switch and to not give up when it doesn't seem to be working right away.
Absolutely. It's actually a continuum. And that's one of the activities that we do during positive discipline workshops is help parents understand how just like when we were little and let's say you were a toddler and older children were riding bikes and you looked at the bike and it didn't even cross your mind that you would be riding a bike one day. So it wasn't something that you thought about. Just like when we first become parents and we don't know what's coming down the pipe, we might not think that we need tools because we might think, well, my parents figured it out, I'll figure it out. That's fine. But then the child who was a toddler and didn't care about bikes all of a sudden becomes a kindergartner and wants to ride their bike. They realize that all the other children are riding their bikes. That's like a parent who all of a sudden realizes, wait a second, other people have tools that I don't have. Or an educator who says, there's all these problems and there's got to be a different way. I see it on social media or I see my colleague knows it, but I don't know it. And now I want it. Right? And so then we've got the child who starts riding the bike and at first is very wobbly and falls off and needs training wheels and needs the parent running behind them and is very focused on just moving those pedals and staying balanced. And that's like a parent who just took the positive discipline workshop and now has these tools, these little training wheels, but is very focused on doing it right and not falling off that bike, right? Right. But eventually the more the child practices, the more automatic it becomes, the more confident they become, and they don't have to think about the pedal and the balance. It just becomes more automatic. And the same with the parent. The more you practice, even if you make mistakes, even if you have to go back and apologize and reflect on what happened and how you're going to do it differently next time, that is the practice that will help you internalize those skills. And eventually that child is old enough where they turn to the younger sibling and say, hey, it looks like you're ready to ride your bike. Let me help you learn. And that's the adult saying, okay, now I've practiced so much. I have these skills. I know that they work. They've changed my life. They've changed how I relate with my child. And now I want to share it with others. So that's that continuum of change and growth that we need to be ready to embrace when we are learning something new, be it Montessori or positive discipline or anything.
Yeah, and I think I have 7 kids. I've been a mom for 20 years. And one thing that I have learned is that if I don't grow, if I don't heal, if I don't learn, I will revert back to what I've always known and what wounded me. Or let me rephrase that. Or I will be responding to my wounds when I'm interacting with my children.
Absolutely.
So like you were saying with that parent who at the beginning, my parents did it, I'm fine. In no way is this saying that the parents we grew up with were not amazing parents. It's just that growth mentality that, and all of us are wounded because we're surrounded by humans who are wounded, right? So if we don't have a growth mentality, all we are going to be doing is copying and pasting wounds. So we just have to keep learning. We have to keep growing. It just has to take that effort and being willing to make mistakes. And I love the way that you emphasized to go back and apologize. I think that's huge.
Oh, yes.
So in this chapter, in chapter 2 of Positive Discipline, they talk about kindness and firmness. How do those two things go together? Can you speak into that within the positive discipline mindset?
Absolutely. So it's having a visual is easier. So maybe we can add one in the show notes. But think of firmness and kindness as a continuum, or like a graph, if you will, right? So we have firmness on the x-axis and kindness on the y-axis. And so I'm a parent who is not firm, so who is not clear and decisive in their setting of limits and in their explanations and in holding the limits, and is also not kind. That means that they're not compassionate, they're not empathetic, they're not looking at the child through a positive lens. So a parent who's neither firm nor kind is considered an uninvolved parent. And this is normally, most people who are listening to this podcast are not going to be in that category, just due to the fact that they are listening to a podcast about Montessori and positive discipline. But these are situations of neglect, and these are uninvolved parents. But then if you think about that uninvolved parent, if they were kinder, right, if we move towards more kindness, but without firmness, then we have a permissive parent. This is the parent that's like, oh, you don't want to do your homework? Oh, that's fine. You don't want to go to karate class, even though we already paid for it? Oh, that's fine. You don't want to pick up your room? That's okay. I'll do it for you. That's the permissive parent. They think they're being a good parent. They think they're being very loving, but love is not just letting your child do whatever they want, but also believing that your child is capable of doing hard things, right? And that it's good for them. So that's your permissive parent. Now let's go back to the uninvolved parent, but now let's raise the firmness quotient, if you will. So now this is a parent who's very authoritarian. So authoritarian parents are parents who say, you do it because I say so. I'm the parent, that's why. They use a lot of punishment. So if you don't clean your room, then you don't get to go play outside. If you don't do your homework, then you're not going to the birthday party, right? They use a lot of punishments. They use coercion. They use control. And that sets the child up in a situation where they are silenced, right? Where they just have to comply. And this is where a lot of the sneaking around and the lying comes, because there's just too much control, right? So far we have the uninvolved parent, which most parents here are not. We have the permissive parent, which some of us might find ourselves in some of the time, right? Depending on our situation. Sometimes we're so tired, that's like, fine, do whatever you want, right? Or we tend to swing towards the firmness part, where our life might feel out of control, and so we double down on controlling our children because we have power over them, because we're bigger, we're stronger, we're louder, we manage the finances, right? Now, if you have a parent that is firm and kind, then that's an authoritative parent. So there's a difference between authoritarian and authoritative, and those terms are misused a lot, so listener beware. An authoritative parent is one who can set and hold respectful limits, who can say, your homework needs to be done before you can go play outside. And they will hold that. They have the tools to hold those limits, but they do it from a place of kindness and compassion and believing in the child. And so they'll say, doing your homework might not seem important to you. I get it. And it is important for you to develop these math skills. They will help you to think in different ways and to become a stronger problem solver, right? And so let's figure out a way that your homework can be less disagreeable. Would you like to do it in the kitchen? Would you like me to sit next to you while I read my book and you do it? And that way, if you have questions, I can support you, etc. So these are parents who can hold those limits, but they do so with compassion, from a place of loving their child and knowing that it's what's best for them, right? And so those are the 4 quadrants. And please know that we are all going to be swinging. We're never going to be the perfect authoritative parent 100% of the time. Like, I mess up all the time. Most of us are swinging between permissive and authoritarian. Like I said, depending on the conditions that we're going through in our life, depending on the tools that we have, the bandwidth that we have, and the amount of stress that we're under. Because research has shown that when we're stressed out, we revert to what we learned in childhood, because that's our safe zone. And so the authoritative parent is one who is trying to be conscious and aware, and might do journaling or self-reflection or some sort of exercises to bring themselves back into this balance between permissiveness and authoritarianism.
I loved this part of the chapter. I found it really fascinating how they lifted up within each one of the 4 types. Like, for example, they said a child who grows up in a permissive environment, they tend to have very low self-regulation and low self-discipline, or in the authoritative one, it talked about how they have very low emotional self-regulation and low self-esteem. So it's just interesting then kind of the ripple effect that comes out of that. It's so fascinating. But I love how the one that is high in firmness and high in kindness, it just really shows that dignity and respect, but both for the adult and the child. That this environment is a democratic leadership environment, but you are part of the problem-solving conversation. So you will have that significance in this space, but at its appropriate level. Correct. Right? So you can be part of the decision making, but when it's appropriate. At some point, I am still the parent, so I will have that last say or whatever, but you are part of it, and I will respect you as a member of this community. Like, it's neat.
It's absolutely wonderful, and it gives us a very clear visual. That's what I love about it, that you can use this these 4 quadrants as a way of assessing where you are at any particular point in your parenting. And then you can notice how your child's behavior is a reflection or a reaction to the choice that you made in parenting. And so what that allows us to do is to change, to shift, because now we know that if what I did led to this behavior, if I don't like that behavior and I don't want it for my child, then I need to change something about my approach. And when you do, the child changes. That is one of the most important aspects of understanding positive discipline, is that it all comes back to the adult. We have that power to change how the child behaves and experiences the world by how we behave and experience the world with our children.
Mm-hmm. So, Pilar, positive discipline is huge. We could talk about it for a long time. If you could help us just with 1 or 2 specific tools to put into our tool bag based off of positive discipline, what tools would you give us?
I love curiosity questions. Again, with the right attitude. Curiosity questions are the antidote to control, to barking orders, if you will. So let's say your child left their soggy boots in the middle of the floor instead of putting them away where they belong, right? An authoritarian parent would say, put your shoes away, or I've told you a million times, I don't want to see your shoes, on the floor over here. And so then we have to think, okay, how does the child react? And they might put their shoes away if they're afraid of you. They might push back and say, no, you do it. I don't care about my stupid shoes, right? They might slink off and shut themselves up in their room and not do anything. Depending on the child's personality, they're just a lot of things, their experiences when they were younger, etc. Now, if we turn that scenario and use a curiosity question, if we tap into the idea that the child might not have done it to be mean, or might not have done it to disregard what you need, but they might have done it for a million other reasons, then we can just get curious and we can say, hey, I notice your boots are on the floor in the middle of the living room. Where do our winter boots go when you come in? And what's fascinating is that when you ask a question, the human brain can't help but think of an answer. Like this has been, it's been researched how the questions bring the prefrontal cortex back online if it has been disconnected because the child is in a panic or is angry at you or is thinking, oh, now I'm going to get in trouble, right? So if a child is in fight or flight and we ask a question, again, with the right attitude, not, hey, where do the boots go, right? But, hey, where do the boots go when you come in? And then even if the child doesn't answer your question, because 9 times out of 10, they won't answer you, but they might get up and they might be grumpy, like, okay, and then they'll go and they'll grab their boots and they'll throw them in the closet. Or if they still don't, then you can ask, hey, what's getting in the way of you putting your boots in the closet when you come in? And then the child might say, well, the closet's really cluttered, or the door doesn't open well, or, they will tell you their experience that you might not have realized. And then that's when you do a little bit of problem solving. But it's that curiosity question with the right attitude that shifts everything, that goes from creating a problem, right, from escalating a situation to de-escalating it, better understanding your child, helping your child feel seen and heard, and reminding them that they belong to this family and that they are required to follow the limits that ideally they helped put into place. So that's curiosity questions.
I like that question because it creates a problem-solving mentality that will last. Like even as adults, you come across a problem, and if you have this habit in your head of saying, okay, what is preventing me from going and asking for that raise? What is preventing me from going and talking to this person about how they hurt my feelings? Whatever. It's just an action question, to help you kind of find a deeper solution. So I can see how a child who grows up with these curiosity questions can have more of a action problem-solving mentality throughout their life.
I'm really glad that you pointed that out, because it's not just about solving the problem in the moment, right? It's rewiring the brain for the future, and it's allowing the child to see themselves as a contributing member of the family and not a burden, right? And so absolutely, you are shifting how they move forward in their lives and how they then relate to others, and how they bring this to other people in their lives and other relationships. So by healing your relationship with your child, you are giving them a greater opportunity to have healthy relationships down the road. And it all starts with the muddy boots in the living room. Right? Yeah.
It also, again, is very rooted in Montessori, where, we ask questions to help them find their own answers. And even in doing that, like the difference between me saying, put your muddy boots away, and where do our muddy boots go? There is a choice involved in that now, instead of me just obeying, which, there's something inside of, maybe it's just me, but there's something inside when I'm being told to do something that makes me want to resist, versus if I'm making the choice to do it, you're more willing to do it. Absolutely. Right? So by turning it into a question, I'm now having the dignity of making the choice to do that. So like in the atrium, I'm imagining, a child in level 1, they don't put their rug away. So instead of saying, hey, put your rug away, be like, what do we do with our rug after we are done with our work? Exactly. So we're turning it into a wondering question rather than a curiosity question, rather than a telling of what to do. I love that. I love that a lot. In the book, he has a whole list of questions of normal things in life. Like instead of saying, don't forget your coat, you say, what do you need if you don't want to be cold outside? Yes.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly. And one of the things that I realized, so I have a 13-year-old son who, as adolescents want to do, sometimes their brain is somewhere else. They're not thinking about managing all of their things. And so I used to I used to tell him, you're forgetting your jacket or you're forgetting your lunchbox. And that word, forgetting, is a label, right? You're forgetful, right? It ends up being you're forgetful. And so instead, once I realized that I was doing this, I switched it to, do you have everything you need for today? And that right there, every morning I ask him, and now it's just a force of habit. And then he just stops and he says, oh, my lunchbox. And then he'll run in and grab his lunchbox. And so what happens is that our words become their internal monologue, right? We all know that, when we're angry, our mother comes out of our mouth, right? And so we want these questions to become their internal monologue so that they eventually can self-reflect. So we are, just like we co-regulate with our children, we co-reflect with our children through positive discipline. Mm-hmm. Another one is called the wheel of choice. And this one is a little bit more involved because it requires you to teach or expose your child to a variety of different little skills. So, for example, how to go to a calm area when you're feeling upset, or how to regulate yourself by counting backwards from 10. Little skills like that, right? Little regulation skills. So we teach them a little bit at a time. And then we invite the child to put together what we call a wheel of choice, which is like just a little wheel, like a casino wheel, if you will. Mm-hmm, but right. Each segment of the wheel, there's like maybe 8 segments, and each segment corresponds to one little coping mechanism. So this can be an anger wheel of choice. It can be a sadness wheel of choice. It can be a getting ready wheel of choice, depending on what situation your child is struggling or what big feelings your child is working through. So let's say we have an anger wheel of choice for a child who's having a hard time regulating their big angry feelings. And so we've given the child all the skills, and so now they have the wheel of choice. During a calm time, we practice with the child using the wheel of choice. And so we say, okay, let's pretend that you got really angry because your sister took your favorite toy and you want to go punch her, but that's not okay. And so something that you could do is go look at your wheel of choice and spin it, or just look at it and choose one thing that would help you feel better. And so again, that need to go and look at the different strategies is already helping the prefrontal cortex to regulate again, to come back online. And then the child can look through the tools and say, okay, I think I'm going to go to my quiet zone for a little bit. And so then they'll go and they'll calm down, and then you can help them, obviously, if you're available or if the guide is available. But this is how they use all of these little tools as a resource to start making choices independently so that they're not always having to rely on adults and they're not always reacting during situations. And so you start with little situations that that they're able to more or less handle independently, and it builds up from there. And I've had lovely testimonials from parents in the hub who've used it, and in my membership community who've used it, and it's just remarkable how once the children get into the habit, they will go and they will pick something. And because they've created it themselves, there's that work of the hand that goes into it. And we know that when children or any person is working with their hands, it's allowing the brain to retain things so much better. And so that's called the wheel of choice. And it's something that people can read about and look it up online if they want to learn more about it.
I like that because, again, I feel like you're just planting seeds for further growth into adulthood for, okay, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I'm feeling really angry right now, and teaching them very early on how to respond in a healthy way, like have pre-known things that are tools for me that help me self-regulate.
Correct.
So you're teaching them from a very young age.
Yes. And you're not telling them don't be angry, right?
Right.
You're telling them it's perfectly okay to be angry. And it's not okay to hit your sister, right? So there's the firm and kind. I see you're angry. Oh, it's such a big feeling to have in your body, depending obviously on the child's age. Such a big feeling to have in your body. That's that kindness part. It's the empathy part. And it's not okay to hit your sister, right? Like, I can't allow you to hit your sister. Well, let's go look at your wheel of choice and see if there's something that will help you. And then there's a lot of different, different tools, but there's one that helps the child understand how their brain works. And it's called the brain in the palm of your hand. And so you can tell the child, once you do this activity, let's go. Right now your lid is flipped. That means that your prefrontal cortex is offline. Right now your lid is flipped. Let's bring down your lid with one of the choices from your wheel of choice. And so you give the child compassion, you hold the limit, and you provide them with agency in how they choose to manage their emotions.
Right. They still get to choose.
Exactly.
They still get choice.
They still get to choose. You're not telling them what to do. They still get to choose, and they might not choose from those, and you still hold those limits, right? And you might invite them to do something else. You might then resort to a different tool, right? So you might ask a curiosity question. What would help you feel better right now? Or what about what your sister did made you feel so angry, right? So you move through 2 or 3 or 4 different tools until you find one that the child connects to, and that is the one that they need at that moment to help them come back down and get that prefrontal cortex back online.
Right. So Pilar, if I wanted to go learn more about positive discipline, because we just barely skimmed the surface today.
Yes.
What are some resources that you could give me so that I can go learn more?
Well, there is a whole website dedicated to positive discipline, so positivediscipline.com. They have lots of free articles and they have lots of paid resources. My suggestion would be that if you have a workshop, an in-person workshop in your town, then by all means take it. These workshops, like I mentioned previously, are experiential. So you will get to practice these tools. You will get to work with other parents and with a trained facilitator, and so that you can experience firsthand, because it's one thing to read about it, but it's a totally different experience to live it. And what we do in positive discipline workshops is we help parents stand in their child's shoes and see things from the child's perspective. And when parents do, there is really no going back. Like, there is a profound transformation in how parents see their children, and that sets off a whole process of growth. So try to take an online workshop. You can look up, positive discipline workshop and the name of your town and see if that comes up. There are lots of positive discipline books. Most of them have been written by Jane Nelson, who developed this program. And she collaborates with different people like Chip DeLorenzo for Montessori classrooms, for Montessori classroom guides. There are positive discipline books all the way from toddlers and preschoolers through adolescents. There are workshops for marriage, positive discipline in adult relationships. And so there are lots of different places to learn. And specifically for Montessori homeschoolers or for homeschooling parents, I have a library of positive discipline tools that are really short. So they're like 5 to 7 minute videos where I go through and I share how each tool is applied specifically in a homeschool setting, because we are in a tricky situation where we are both parent and guide. So it does become especially important to understand these tools. And that's part of my Hub Foundation's membership. So if there are homeschoolers listening and they want to have more tools, then that's one option out there. But there are so many different free tools, paid tools. What's important is that you start somewhere. Start with one tool, and it will take you to the next resource that you need in order to further your learning.
Right. Those are great resources. Yeah, I've firmly enjoyed the positive discipline in the Montessori classroom. It is such an easy read, but so full of so much I've really enjoyed that book.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at positive discipline as a whole. It's easy. These tools are not difficult, and yet they are so deep and so transformative.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, Pilar, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate you letting us just learn from you.
Oh, Carrie, thank you. It's been such a privilege to chat with you. And anybody who has questions about positive discipline, please feel free to reach out. I'm on social media, and you're welcome to reach out if you want to learn more.
Yeah, I'll put all of that in our show notes for them to be able to access you in those ways.
Wonderful.
Great. Thanks, Pilar.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast. In our show notes, I have a bunch of resources there to help you continue to explore this subject of positive discipline, starting with the book Positive Discipline in the Montessori Classroom by Chip DeLorenzo and Jane Nelson. You can purchase that through the link on our show notes that takes you to Amazon. You can also purchase that book from Montessori Services. I also put a link for the Positive Discipline in the Montessori Classroom website, where you can access a whole bunch of news articles that really dive into a lot of topics within positive discipline. And you can also register for the online Positive Discipline in the Montessori course. And if you choose to register, we ask that you indicate that CGS is your group affiliation. There is also a link for positivediscipline.com, which also has a whole bunch of different books and resources available to you there as well. I went ahead and put links to a whole bunch of podcast episodes that we have had that circle around this theme of freedom and discipline, freedom and limits. Also in our show notes, there is a link for becoming a member of CGS USA. There are many benefits to becoming a member. One of those is that you get access to the virtual songbook. This is a page on our website behind the members only section that has dozens and dozens of videos of catechist and formation leaders singing songs that you can sing in your atrium with children on all the different themes throughout the year. This podcast is sponsored by the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. We would like to thank all of our contributing members because you are making this podcast possible. If you would like to know more about Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, or if you would like to become a member, please go to cgsusa.org. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. Go and fall more deeply in love with God.